Trumpet takes too much practice. I don't want to spend my final days on a desert island practicing the trumpet. You'll never get that with AI. That one moment of clarity where you say, no, oh, this is how we have to do it now. I know exactly how it needs to be.
The idea was to get rid of the boring, annoying jobs and not take over all human creative potential and make it so that illustrators can't work in their profession anymore. Animators not finding jobs. It's like going in the completely wrong direction. Today I'm trying something entirely different, which is an interview with fellow dark ambient musician Nathan Plante. His music is somewhat eerie sometimes, always in the ambient spectrum, not necessarily super in the background. Sometimes a lot is going on there as well, but it's very compatible with my own music too, which is probably why it resonates with me so much. His album Electric Forest was in the top 3 of my most listened to albums of 2025. It has field recordings, modular synthesizers. It is eerie without getting too ominous, and I really enjoy it. It just has such a nice balance. I love his music so much that when he asked me whether I wanted to make the album art for his first EP, I didn't even think about it. I just said yes. It was just such a perfect fit, and I really love how the album art turned out. That's something we talk about in this interview as well. So in this conversation, we talk about his music, about album art, obviously, about generative AI in making music and art in general. We talk about science fiction and his inspirations, and it just turned out really fascinating. So this interview is really worth watching, and I hope you enjoy it.
First of all, thank you for inviting me to this interview. I'm really excited to talk to you again in real time and see you sort of in person on the screen. My name is Nathan Plante, and in real life, I'm a trumpet player. So that's my main instrument and also my profession. But my first musical experience was actually in the handbell choir at my church when I was probably 5 years old. I couldn't even read music, but I liked to ring those bells, and the old ladies would mark my notes with a highlighter in my music. And I still don't know to this day how I managed to actually do it, but I managed to play with the handbell choir. And later on, when I was 10, I started playing the trumpet in the school band and just kind of continued on with that and studied trumpet, classical trumpet. I play in a classical chamber orchestra, but synthesizers didn't come until a little over 2 years ago. I was looking to do something a little bit different with my musical experience, and I thought about maybe making video game music and started messing around with a DAW and electronic music. And I remember I had a really nice bass line going, and I wanted to find a bass sound for that bass line. And I downloaded probably 1,000 different free bass sounds for my DAW and would spend just hours going through looking for sounds instead of making music. And that sort of led me to synthesis, which led me to Sarah Bell Reed's LSS course, where we also met. And that was kind of it for me. I fell in really deep and really hard into the modular synthesizer thing. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
Let's talk a bit about your first album, Electric Birds. So where did the inspiration come from for that?
I guess the inspiration really came from the modules that I was using. I had a pretty small collection at that time, and I was experimenting around with the modules and improvising, something that I always found really difficult on the trumpet, but somehow with modular, those oscillators start droning and you start messing with them in real time, and it really just feels like improvisation the whole time. I really wanted to put an EP out before releasing a full-length album because, making music, recording music, putting out an album, all of these steps are sort of separate in their own way, separate arts, and I wanted to practice on something small, and I had a small collection of pieces that I was really proud of that came from improvisation. I really like using field recordings. I really like this idea of the meeting point of people and nature, technology and nature, and those were kind of the inspirations for it. I actually had two pieces that existed, the first two tracks on the album, Distorted Reflection and Cumulus, and so I wrote a third piece to accompany those and make it into sort of a trio. And Electric Birds, the title came from this trumpet technique that I can do. The composer, Rebecca Saunders, who's one of the greatest living composers right now, she likes to write for the trumpet, and she came up with this sound together with the trumpet player Marco Blau and called it Electric Birds. And it's this very fast-paced, tweeting. I don't even know really how to describe it, but it's in the title track of the album, Electric Birds. I use that sound. So that's where the title of the track came from, and that's also where the title of the album came from.
Yeah, I was curious about the title because it's so relevant for album art. And I always have such trouble coming up with titles for my own stuff. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, that's funny. Sometimes I have the title first. I want to make an album, or I want to make a track that is called this, and it's going to be about this, and then I figure out the music later. You never know what's going to come first, the title or the music.
That's great. For me, it's usually like I'm racking my brain and thinking, should I call this Untitled 12? And yeah, no, I've so far I've not given up yet. So usually I come up with something. So titles come to you naturally too. That's great.
I feel like they do. Yeah, this issue of figuring out what to call it, I don't have that. I mean, I have whole albums with titles that don't have music yet in my notebook.
That's cool. That's cool. I mean, I have loads of albums in my notebook too, but they don't have titles.
Maybe we should collaborate on that. You send me the music, I'll tell you what the titles are.
Oh, perfect. That would be really great. And that would really help. It would speed up my editing process.
Yeah, right.
Especially since it's so relevant for releasing, and yeah, I get the feeling that you wanted to start on something smaller. But I do think of Electric Bird as an album, not as an EP for some reason. That's why I asked you your first album, because to me it feels so whole already.
Yeah, it's well-rounded to me, though funny enough, Electric Forest, which was the second album, which just came out this fall, as you know, since you did the album art for it, it was really a continuation of the same musical thoughts and ideas. And although I'm happy I released in the way I did, they almost could have been one album altogether. And I always thought if I do release on physical media one day, I would probably put these two together on one tape or on one vinyl. Because to me, in my mind, they really do belong together. And I think that's also why I went with a similar title, Electric Birds and Electric Forest, because they're both part of the same compositional process and the same kind of compositional era, if I can call that short time an era.
Oh, totally. If it's all one thing, totally an era. Yeah, talk a bit about your compositional process. I'm super interested.
Well, like I said earlier, it often starts with improvisation. Sometimes I do start with a title and a concept and build the piece around that. But it really is playing with the modules, playing with sound. I love working with field recordings, all different kinds of field recordings. So sometimes I'll have this cool recording that I find, I'll toss it onto my hardware sampler and just kind of start messing with it. And sometimes just doing that brings out the inspiration for the rest of the piece, or it gives the piece sort of a natural given structure that comes out of the field recording, and I put the rest of the elements sort of on that foundation. And I'm definitely always thinking about how I can perform the piece live. I don't usually do tape music pieces, although there is one piece on Electric Birds and also one piece on Electric Forest that really were pure tape music pieces that I recorded the bits and then put them together in the DAW. for the most part, I'm always thinking about how can I do this live? How can I perform this live? So that idea of live performance always plays a role. I mean, in my job, I'm a trumpet player. That's what I do. I get on stage and I perform. So with the synthesizer, it was definitely a goal from the beginning to find a way to get on stage with this stuff and perform. And as you know, a lot of the music can run by itself. I can set everything up in my sequencer and just press start and just have it go. But when you're performing live, you also want to do something with your hands, or at least look like you're doing something. So I'm always thinking about what elements, might come directly from the sampler as a pre-prepared layer, and what elements can I do live. And that definitely plays a role when I'm coming up with the pieces. I don't want to do something that's so heavily layered that it just becomes a piece of tape music, only maybe in extreme cases like those two pieces I mentioned. And I think actually that idea has helped my compositional process, because also, as you know, it's really easy to think like, I think this needs another layer. I think what if I added this on top and this on top and this on top, and suddenly you've got, 80 tracks in your DAW and you just don't even know where to start with mixing. So I try to focus on having 3, 4, or 5 different layers maximum, something that I can really manage in a live setting. And I think that helps my music. It helps it not get too busy or too thick or too opaque. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, since you do ambient type music, I mean, there are lots of effects on it, so it just gets way too full if you have more elements, in my experience. So I totally relate to that. My music also often only has like 3, 4, 5 elements and not more. So I can't really relate to all the people who have like mixing sessions of 80 tracks or something like that. But I guess it adds up with drums. So
that's true. And I don't use much percussion, though I'm hoping to move a little in that direction and strengthen that weakness and try to add some beats here and there, at least for live performances.
So you're looking to get into beats too? That's great.
A little bit. I don't want to play techno shows, but I know people really like beats, and it's something that draws people in. And as a performer, I want to perform my music and my point of view and perspective, but I also understand the need to serve your audience and try to give them elements that can draw them in. And if that is a beat sometimes, then I'm happy to add a beat if it fits into my concept.
I had some drums on my first album, but I had this one situation where my brother said that, oh yeah, there are no drums on your first album. And there are drums on it, on like 2 tracks, and he just didn't realize, or it just didn't compute as drums. So I think my music is not very suitable for that. So I just don't work that way. It's interesting because we make sort of similar music, I would say. It's like pushing in 2 different directions. If you go more drums, it's one direction, and if I'm moving away from drums, but it's still, our music still fits, I think. So that's cool.
Yeah, I also wonder what to even call it. You describe it as ambient, which I think fits, but often my music is a bit too busy and maybe too many peaks and valleys to be considered ambient. It's definitely demanding your attention, but it doesn't have beats, so I can't really call it dance music, and it just falls somewhere in this dark ambient experimental electronica something zone. And I often actually feel a little uncomfortable about that because I don't know where to place it. If I'm trying to book a gig, I don't know what to tell people, what kind of music it is. But the more I release and the more feedback I get, the more I feel like I'm on the right path. So I know my music is speaking to some people, and if that's not the techno crowd, that's okay.
I don't think all the music has to make everyone dance. It's, it's perfectly valid to just mellow out and chill. And also at a gig, I love gigs where it's just like you sit down, you relax, maybe
Indeed.
some pillows on the floor. It's perfect. I know the problem with the dark ambient, and is it even ambient if there's too much going on? Because I also have problems placing my music, so I know that problem very well. So I think that there's this whole section of ambient that is more like melodic ambient, I would say, where there's more stuff going on than, the background music for airports type ambient, which is very in the background and trying to be in the background.
For sure.
I know that some people making ambient would try to have as little going on as possible to fit that genre definition. But I think nowadays it's not that strict anymore. I think there is a lot of melodic ambient now, in the sort of in between of something that draws your attention and something that can be in the background. And I like to have this in like a balance that if someone actively listens to it, there is something to keep you engaged, but it can also play in the background and not annoy you or draw you out of whatever you're doing. So it's like this balance I'm trying to hit. So for me, it's very conscious. Do you think about that yourself? How much is going on, or is it more that you go towards a live situation, not like someone sitting at home playing the music?
Well, I definitely wish if somebody were to listen to my music that they would put on headphones or have it on really nice speakers and just sit and take the journey. Especially Electric Forest, my latest album, is really meant to be a journey from beginning to end. Each track is very different and it really guides you through a kind of story from start to finish. And it's something that definitely bothers me about live shows that I've played with electronic music, is it's often in sort of a bar type setting, so people are getting drinks, there's noise going on, people are chatting, people are coming in and out, and that's fine. I appreciate that people still come and they listen in these settings. I know I also like this setting where I don't feel like I'm glued to a chair and that I'm not allowed to get up. But for me, the ideal setting would be for somebody to really sit and just listen and take the time and the space to enjoy what I've created. And I try to do that when I'm listening to other people's music as well. But I'm definitely thinking about a certain arc and a certain structure. It's very rare that my music is completely static for any long period of time. I'm always trying to lead the listener somewhere. I think that comes a little bit also from my classical training. That's how a lot of classical music works, with buildup of tension and the resolution of that tension and taking the listener on a journey. Yeah, I kind of forget what the question was at this point, but that's what I have to say.
Yeah, but you answered it. So let's talk a little bit about your inspirations. Is there any specific thing that inspires you outside of music, or is it within music?
Yeah, definitely a lot of inspirations from music, but also outside of music. I'm a huge science fiction fan. I've almost always got a science fiction book going. I think that's where my fascination with this idea of the crossover point between man and machine and nature and technology, because a lot of science fiction deals with these subjects of humans and technology melding together in one way or another. I always dreamed of being some kind of cyborg. And so in a way, working with the Modular and all the beepy lights and the cables, I almost just want to like plug myself into this machine and play it through my brain. I don't know, it sounds kind of funny, but I like this idea, and I think it's also been, in a strange way, what kept me from electronic music for so long, is that I felt like acoustic music and music that is played live on an acoustic instrument is so much more expressive and somehow more real. But the more I got interested in synthesis and learned about the techniques of synthesis, I realized that it can be very expressive and very real, and you don't have to have that physical instrument that you're playing to be expressive and make musical art. and that the way of making music and making sound art doesn't always have to be tied to playing every single note yourself physically with your body, that there are other ways to create sound. I mean, I think of the early tape music pieces that really were tape music. When the composition was finished, it was on a reel of tape and the performances were playing that tape. And maybe you had somebody at a mixing desk tweaking things live, but otherwise it was a fixed piece of music. And I think I ignored that for a long time. And now that I'm getting into synthesis, I feel like I have this backlog of music history and of musical influences that I need to catch up on. And actually I've been listening to more and exploring more new music in the last 2 years than I think I have in the last, 10 or 15 years combined.
Yeah, I think once you get into making a specific type of music, it really draws you into listening more into that, definitely. I've also explored way more ambient than I used to listen to. I come from this more of dark ambient direction, and proper ambient, like music for airports or something like that, I didn't even listen to until a few years ago. And I think making it has drawn me much deeper into it, that's for sure. I like this what you say about feeling that you want to plug yourself into the machine. I mean, there's something about these blinking lights and all the knobs and so on. It always makes me feel like old Star Trek series. So
Totally.
I always feel like I always wanted to fly a spaceship. So I feel like I can with this one, just that the space I'm going to is sort of in my head with the music, but it's still space journey for me.
Totally.
Science fiction. Favorite science fiction book?
Oh, wow. Hard to pick a favorite book, but I think my all-time favorite author would have to be Iain M. Banks and his whole Culture series. I don't know if you've read these. I'm on my third read-through at the moment. Everyone's so often picking another one of them up. And this is for me science fiction gold. This is a science fiction Bible. This is the way to do it. I'm so sad that he died and that we will never get another one of these books again. But there's enough of them that if you wait a little bit, you can go read through them again and experience it again fresh. I know just last year or earlier this year, I read Use of Weapons again. And there's a twist in there, which I won't divulge here, but I had totally forgotten about the twist. And when I got to that point in the book, it just punched me right in the stomach all over again, and it was so exciting. Anyway, this is not an interview about Iain M. Banks, but that is definitely my favorite author and my favorite science fiction series.
If it inspires you, it all goes into it. So I think it's relevant.
Yeah, for sure. How about you? What's your favorite sci-fi book or sci-fi author?
I think it's very hard to choose for me, but Ursula K. Le Guin, definitely my favorite author. And I would think Left Hand of Darkness, because that was the book that really drew me into science fiction properly. I mean, there were also other classics like Solaris, and I also like from them also The Invincible. That's also really good.
Oh, I haven't read that one yet. Okay.
That's really, really good. The Invincible. I can recommend that. Left Hand of Darkness is very much about gender. And before I read that one, I thought science fiction was a bit pulpy most of the time. And there's a lot of pulp in science fiction. But there's also a lot of serious science fiction that is more anthropological. And I think Le Guin was one of those influences that really drew me into that type of science fiction, and that has definitely inspired me a lot.
Yeah, awesome.
Why don't we talk about album art now? Because I wanted to talk about that. I mean, I made your album art, and the video I was planning to make is about album art, so maybe we should talk about that.
Yes, let's talk about your art.
What interests me is what What motivated you to work with an artist rather than trying to do it yourself or using AI or something like that?
Well, I consider myself a very creative person, but visually I am not that creative. And I think, or I know that to come up with something compelling that is right in the colors and right in the format was going to be too much work and something I wasn't really interested in. And to be honest, I mean, I've been in the music industry for 20 years, and I know that none of us can do this alone. We need a network, we need collaboration, and I think our art is better for that when you have somebody else take a listen and do a tweak on their own or work with somebody else. And I just knew when I saw your photographs that whatever you could come up with was going to be 1,000 times better than what I could come up with or even conceive. And I was right. And I think as far as AI goes, I mean, there was a quick thought in there, oh, I can get a subscription to one of these AI image generators and just have it spit out some images for me and pick one. But I know you can tell when it's AI art, and I didn't want to put that at the front of my album, which I made, in every detail myself. And I also just think that using AI to make art and music is probably the silliest and most wasteful use of this technology. I mean, let's use it to better route the traffic through the city. Let's use it to help diagnose medical illnesses or come up with novel treatments or fight climate change. And I'm sure it is being used in all of these ways, but to waste this energy and this technology on creating images that are just gonna look nice for that moment but have zero depth, I think is just silly. We as artists, we have a perspective, we have a point of view, we have lived a life, and we have suffered, and we have had joy. And that's what gives our art the depth. That's what compels people to listen and to listen again and to search for those details every time they look at it or hear it again. And I just don't think you're ever really going to get that with these AI art things or music production programs. Yeah, I'm grateful for what we did together, and I was always just shocked when I said, do you have any pictures of birds or something with birds? And you're like, oh, I've got this great picture of these bird skeletons from a museum. I never would have thought of this. I never would have entered my head to use the skeletons, and the picture is so great. And also this image for Electric Forest with sort of this path leading into the forest that you then did this beautiful aerochrome, is that what it's called? The aerochrome technique on there. I mean, I never could have come up with this in a million years, and I don't think an AI artist would have come up with that either.
Yeah, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly with your perspective on AI. I don't know whether you noticed, but I have a degree in robotics, and I even studied AI at some point, computing in AI. Down the hall, there was the digital music crowd, and I hung around with those guys a lot. And sometimes I went to their lectures too, because I always wanted to be a musician, but didn't feel I had it in me, It was that time of my life where I felt like I wasn't good enough, and I was always questioning what I was making and so on. I remember that I went to a lecture of generative music in this case, and Brian Eno uses generative techniques a lot. So, and I'm a great fan of generative music in general, but I think it's a different type of thing from just AI prompt music, because if you have a generative process, then you've selected the generative process and you've curated what it's doing. You're thinking about why it's doing this sort of thing, and you're making all the creative decisions. Whereas if you tell an AI and prompt it to make me this type of music, or make me music in the style of this artist, then the creative process is not your own anymore. but it's what the computer is doing, and it's not necessarily creative, because it's very hard, because you have to first define what creativity is, and so on and so forth. You can write many articles about that, and I've read many articles about that back then. I think there are better uses of AI, but generative music is still something interesting and can be very creative. And I also think that there is a place for AI in making art, but in the sense that you make the creative choices, not the computer. Because we invented this stuff, AI stuff, to make our lives easier and to improve certain things. But the idea was to get rid of the boring, annoying jobs.
Yes.
And not take over all human creative potential and make it so that illustrators can't work in their profession anymore, which is happening right now, and animators not finding jobs, and so on and so forth. It's like going in the completely wrong direction. I'm all for automation, but not in making art. It's just a different process from generative processes, generative AI, prompt-based AI. There's such a range. A lot of people seem to have this gut reaction of, no, AI is terrible. No, it doesn't go that far. But at the same time, I think we're going in the wrong direction with it. And I can definitely clock AI art. So for me, if I see an artist who's only using AI art, it makes me wonder about their motivations behind their own music, whether they also use AI in their music, and so on.
Totally. You wonder where they draw the line in that creativity. And you mentioned generative music, and I'm pretty bitter that AI has kind of taken over this term generative music, because I also love using generative techniques and randomized patterns that you then use as a building block to tweak around. And like you said, you're setting the parameters for this randomness, you're tweaking it maybe in real time yourself. And I think it's a very powerful tool. And it's a bummer that now generative is associated with, oh, you just put a prompt into ChatGPT and it spit out this piece of music for you. Because I think, especially in synthesis, this idea of using random voltage, it goes back a long way, and people have been using random voltage for modulation since they sort of started out with this stuff. So it's a bummer that I feel like we have to come up with a different term, something that sounds cooler, and the AI, they can keep generative if they want to have that. We'll figure out something else.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also, I feel that with generative processes, I can have a sort of dialogue with the synth, because it's doing something and it might not be the thing that I expected to be doing. And then I can react to that and do something else. And I wouldn't come up with certain things without generative processes in my own music. I do want to have a collaborator in this sense. And I really don't mind collaborating with some AI process, because some AI does make life a lot easier than it would be. There's always this moment with new technologies where there's a rejection of it, like people smashing the machines, basically. And we're at the people smashing the machines stage of AI usage. But that doesn't mean that it's entirely useless, because there are things that we used to do, and that used to be very hard and took a long time, that we can now do very easily with DAW, for example. Splicing tape used to take forever and ever and ever.
Imagine having to cut that tape up and paste it back together.
And technology has improved that process and made things possible that wouldn't be possible without it. And I think AI can do all sorts of things like that too. For example, if you have a stereo recording of your synthesizer voices, and there are 4 voices, and you only have that stereo recording, then maybe you can separate them with AI. Maybe not right now. In a couple of years, probably, you can even separate synth voices. And that would be very useful, because I have recordings where just I was jamming and I didn't think to multi-track it. So there are uses for AI, but people are just using it in the wrong way. And the problem is that it's mostly getting rid of this commercial music sector. Like a lot of musicians support themselves with all this commercial music stuff, like for stock catalogs and making music for corporations and whatever. And that's now going away because everyone's just said, well, we can just ask an AI and it will be just as silly and generic as the stuff that someone produces for a stock library. So, but how are we gonna support ourselves if all the paid work is going away, also for illustrators, animators, and it's not just our problem for music, it's everywhere.
Yeah. And to get back to the album art, what we did was a collaboration. I gave you some ideas. You had this art that you already had, these existing beautiful photographs that you had, and we collaborated on how we could change that to fit my album, to fit the title, and you listened to my music and you got a feel for it, and that makes the end result that much more special. And you just don't have that with AI, and AI can't listen to your music and have original thoughts about it. It can't look at an image and have an original inspiration about how to tweak it. It's all just regurgitating things it's been trained on. And I think we as human beings, there is something to be said for this idea of the epiphany. When you're working on a track or working on a piece of art and you're laying awake at night thinking about it, and somehow this idea just pops into your head. I often think about this old sort of medieval or Renaissance idea of the spheres, that all of this creativity and all of these ideas come just from these celestial spheres that sort of beam this idea into your head if you're so worthy. And I totally get why people thought that, because it really does feel that way sometimes, that this idea just comes to you out of nowhere without any sort of prompting or thinking about it. Your brain just spits this out. And when you're collaborating, you have two different people who can have these ideas and have that one moment of clarity where you say, no, oh, this is how we have to do it now. I know exactly how it needs to be. And you'll never get that with AI. And that's why I'm just so grateful to have worked together with you on this album art. And I'm definitely asking you for the next one, so be ready.
Oh, I'm happy to do it, definitely. I love making album art. I've been doing it for a long time, and I always enjoy making it. And it's definitely the taking inspiration from the music that is my favorite part. I would find it very difficult to work with someone whose music doesn't connect with me. So for me, it's always very personal in that respect. That's why it also feels for me very much like a collaboration on making your vision for the album become reality, that you have something that represents the music. But it's, about what you want, and I can give you ideas about what I would do and so on. I make things that I couldn't make otherwise, and I wouldn't make otherwise, like the edit that I made for you for Electric Forest. I wouldn't have made that edit because normally I don't heavily edit my pictures. Normally I'm more in a documentary style. So usually my pictures are the editing is very limited. But when I make album art, I get to play basically and make it completely different or stuff like that. So I always love that because it's something that I don't normally do, and it's a very different process.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just totally grateful for your work on it, and I understand also, we're talking about hiring artists to do your album art instead of paying a small fee to an AI. I understand also that I'm in the privileged position where I can afford to do that. I can afford to hire somebody and get that original art made for me. And I do understand that not everybody has the means to do that. Not everybody has this connection to somebody. Like I happen to have this connection to you. So I don't want to hate too much on people that turn to AI art, but I feel like there's got to be a way to find somebody to collaborate with, a real person, to get some original art made. And I think people who take that step and go that extra mile will be grateful to themselves to have done it.
I think there are always ways of making it more affordable. For example, students who are still in school, or people on Fiverr. Some people on Fiverr make great album art, and maybe some of them use AI, but you're going to clock it. So I don't think that many of them can get away with it. So there is always a way of making it happen. I used to make album art when I was younger. I used to make album art for a beer, I wasn't even asking for pay. And sometimes if I really like the music, I won't ask for pay. It just depends, It depends who I'm working with. If I know that this person has like financial difficulties, I will take that into consideration. I think a lot of artists work that way too, because it's always a back and forth, and sometimes you just really want to work on a project because you like someone's music.
Yeah, and that's how you build a network, and those kind of things come back around at some point. I really do believe that. Sometimes it takes 10 years, but I've had people that I have given freebies to as well come back around later with paid work, especially back when I was much younger and just starting out. And there's always wiggle room there, and I think building those networks really is the most important thing.
Yeah, definitely. I think the collaborative effort in music in general makes it so that you work on things and you adjust your prices and you just make it happen. So because you want it to come into existence, like, and sometimes you make it so that you're not going to have more profit. For example, if I make a digital release, I know I'm not going to have costs for making tapes, for example. So I know that if I make a tape release, I'm going to be earning less, probably, because a lot of the money will go into production costs. But I still make it because I want to make it happen. It's not all about the money in this. You just want to make something together and make something great and make the music that is in your head, and it's supposed to be the way, the release is supposed to be the way you want it, right? I always wanted to have it a certain way when I make music, and I'm prepared to make sacrifices for it. And it's great when other people have the same idea and want to help you to do that, to achieve that.
Yeah.
The one thing I haven't asked yet that I want to ask is, what is your desert island instrument?
That's a hard question, but right now, if anybody checks out my YouTube channel, you will know I've been pretty obsessed with this synth called the Plante, and I absolutely love my Plante, especially the new Plante Plus, which is a bigger desktop version of the module. It's an 8-voice polyphonic synth. It's so much fun to play with. It's kind of got everything in it. So if I could only take one instrument with me, it would definitely be the Plante, because I feel like I could live with that if that was all I had left. Even though, I mean, the Modular, the great thing about it is having all the modules and swapping everything out and having all these possibilities. But current favorite is definitely the Plante.
I find that really funny because I would have suspected it to be the trumpet, but...
No. Trumpet takes too much practice. I don't want to spend my final days on a desert island practicing the trumpet.
That's great. That's great. That's really funny. There was one more thing that you wanted to say, right?
Oh, I just wanted to make sure people knew that they can check out your lovely album art for Electric Birds and Electric Forest on my Bandcamp page. You find me under just my name, Nathan Plante. I was too lazy to come up with an artist persona. And I'm also making YouTube videos. I'm playing jams on my synths and doing some tutorials on the Plante these days. So if you're interested in that, you can also check me out on my YouTube channel. I'm sure there will be a link below, somewhere here below this video. And I'm so grateful for you, Lilly, that you invited me to this interview, and just so happy to know you and that we got to work together on these 2 albums. And I'm very much looking forward to some future collaborations with you.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would also like to collaborate on music at some point because our
Ooh,
music is so close together.
that's a nice idea. A collab album. Okay, okay. Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, and your YouTube channel, definitely I have to now blame you publicly for giving me plinky gas. So
Sorry.
but I gave you Elmira gas, I think, the other day.
Oh my gosh, I'm scrolling Elmira videos right now, and yeah, I mean the DIY kit is kind of affordable, and I might just have to get one next year.
That's the problem with all the synthesizer videos and so on. Making these kinds of videos, I think I do give people gas for things too.
I mean that's why we watch the videos. We need fuel for the gas.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm very responsible and always think about my purchases for a long time, so it might be a while before I get a Plinky. But I'm definitely watching your videos all the time, and I'm probably gonna get one. The more videos of yours I watch, the more I'm convinced that I should get one.
Well, there are more coming out with some more fun techniques. I keep discovering fun things to do with it, so stay tuned.
Yeah, cool. Great. Well, thank you for talking to me about your music. It was really fun doing this interview.
Thank you. I also had a great time.
Thanks again to Nathan for being open to having this conversation on camera, and I hope you take the time to check out his Bandcamp. The link is in the description. And down there, you also find his YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. It really helps out my channel, so I would really appreciate it. In any case, I hope I see you soon for another video. Bye.